Before we get into our last two segments of the training, which are going to be screenshot videos actually showing you copies of real cost analysis and statements, we're going to first run through the types of fees that you're going to see on a statement. So these are just the most common types of fees that you're going to see on a statement. I'm going to go through a list of them, give you a general explanation, and again, we're going to discuss all of those in detail during the screenshot videos when I actually show you those fees on a real live credit card processing statement. The first one is your monthly fee. These fees are also called things like statement fee or gateway fee, monthly access fee. All of those fees are monthly fees that the processing company charge on a monthly basis. So that would just be basically for the privilege of accepting credit card. And you'll see these fees ranging all over the place. I've seen customers paying no monthly fee, and I've seen customers paying a $40 or $50 a month fee that, again, doesn't really have anything to do with how much credit card volume they process. It's just a fixed cost that's a monthly fixed cost on their statement. You'll also see many credit card processing companies who have programs like My Biz Perks or programs like where you can get free paper or insurance on your terminal, things like that, support fees. So all kinds of different ways that different processors structure them. But an easy way to identify them is that they're normally a set amount that's very obvious, and they're normally towards the bottom of the statement. And it will say something like statement fee $5 or $10 or $15 or $20. So normally it's a fee that's in a multiple of 5, and it says something over to the left that would indicate that it's just some kind of a monthly fee. Next on our list, we have our annual fees. So annual fees, some processors charge an annual fee, and that's a fee that's just like the monthly fee, except it's charged annually. And so that's an annual, usually it's called a renewal fee. Now these can be a little bit tricky, and I'll tell you why. Sometimes you'll get a statement, and it might not have an annual fee on that statement, but the processor is charging that merchant an annual fee. So it's important that whether you charge one or not, it's important that you ask the merchant, do you know if they're currently charging you an annual fee? Is there once a year where you pay a large sum of money? Maybe it's $50 or $100 or $200. And many times they'll tell you, yeah, I have an annual fee that they charge me. So it's important you know that, because then you can put that into your savings calculations, because, maybe you can lower their annual fee, or maybe you can get rid of it altogether depending on your processing company and what they have to offer you. So that's important you understand the annual fee. Number 3, PCI compliance. Every merchant that accepts credit cards is required to be PCI compliant. Now, what that means, I have a whole nother training course on that, so I'm not going to get into great detail. But basically what it means is that every merchant, once a year, they have to complete what's called the self-assessment questionnaire form. It's a very short questionnaire, take about 5 minutes to complete, and it basically ensures that the merchant, the business owner, understands proper use of credit card information. For instance, if they have a pizza shop, I've actually been in a pizza shop before when somebody called in over the phone, a teenager picked up a napkin and said, let me get your credit card information, and started writing the number down on a napkin. That is not PCI compliant, okay? And so, that for all we know, that person could just take that napkin, stick it in their pocket, take it home, quit the next day, and spend $3,000 or $4,000 on that customer's credit card. So that's not PCI compliant. So there's certain rules about how you deal with it. And so the way most credit card processing companies handle PCI compliance is they have a third party, a PCI compliance vendor. And so the merchant will pay an annual or monthly fee in order to cover the cost of that PCI compliance vendor. And then once a year, that PCI compliance vendor is going to reach out to that business owner and say, hey, it's time for you to complete your yearly self-assessment questionnaire form, and we're going to give you a certificate showing that you're compliant for 12 more months. Number 4. Member benefit fees. Now, I already talked about this a little bit in the monthly fee section, but again, you'll see all kinds of things like gold rewards program or business rewards program or whatever. And again, you'll notice that it's a set fee. It's like $9.95 a month or $5 a month or $10 a month. And so it's important to ask the merchant about that, because they may be getting free paper right now for their terminal. So you might need to do something similar. The last thing you want is to get somebody signed up and they think that you're providing something that you're not providing. So just check. If you see a member benefits, just say, what's this right here? What are you guys getting? More often than not, they're going to say, we don't get anything for that. And so it's just a bogus fee and they're not really getting anything out of it. And you can say, well, I'd be more than happy to get rid of that fee if you switched over to our processing service. Next, Monthly minimum fees. Of all the fees I'm going to talk about, the monthly minimum is probably the most complicated, and I'm not actually going to get into a big explanation here because we're going to explain it in the screenshot video, but let me give you a basic explanation. The monthly minimum fee basically says the merchant is going to pay a minimum fee of X. So let me give you an example. Let's say you sold a merchant and you gave them a $25 monthly minimum, which is very common. That's the most common monthly minimum fee is $25. Then let's say you put them on 3-tier pricing. Then the monthly minimum is going to say that business owner has to pay a minimum of $25 in qualified charges. Otherwise, they're going to pay the difference on their statement. So at the end of the month, the merchant had $15 worth of qualified charges on their statement. You have a $25 monthly minimum. So you're going to take 25 minus 15, and they're going to see a $10 monthly minimum fee on their statement. Now, when you see the monthly minimum fee on the statement, it's usually not going to be $25. It's normally going to be like $12.63 or $17.51. Why? Because that's the difference between their monthly minimum and the actual fees that they paid. Again, I'll give you some more specific examples about that because the monthly minimum actually works differently for 4-tier and 3-tier and Interchange Plus, and it's a little bit complicated. So we'll get into that in the next section where it's a little bit more advanced. Next, you have your equipment fees. Don't forget about those. Equipment fees could be a rental fee, could be a lease that they're paying. Now, it's actually really important that you notice that because it may not be on the statement. And so you want to ask the merchant about their ownership. You can watch the video about ownership type and ask them, so what's the deal with the terminal? Do you own it? Do you rent it? Do you lease it? What are you doing with it? And when you ask them that question, what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to understand if they're paying a rental fee because, again, many times the rental fee is not on the statement. It's charged from a separate rental, equipment rental company. Next, tier pricing fees. The next thing you're going to see is tier pricing fees. These are your rates. And again, we'll go through those more in detail on the statement, but you'll see rates on there like 1.69% qualified rate or, 2.29% mid-qualified rate or whatever. You'll see those different rates. That's your tier pricing rates. The other thing you might see on there would be either a surcharge table or interchange fees. We talked about that earlier. You're going to see the interchange fees if they're on Interchange Plus pricing. Now, what is that? Well, what that is, that's all the prices broken down as far as what fees they're paying for the different types of cards. So you're going to see a big list of interchange fees if they're on Interchange Plus pricing. If they're on flat rate pricing with surcharges, which we talked about earlier, then you're going to notice a surcharge table, which is going to look exactly like an interchange table. And it's going to have all these different rates for all the different card types that didn't fall under that qualified flat rate that they were promised. And here's the surcharge that they're charged for that transaction. The last thing that you're going to see on the statement, the last type of transaction or the type of fee is the transaction fee or the per item fee. Now, let me explain the difference. A per item fee normally indicates a fee that's charged per transaction, regardless of the size of the transaction. And the per item fee is normally an interchange fee or a network fee that is something that's passed through to them. It's not profit. It's not charged by the processing company. It's something that's part of the interchange cost structure. So some cards, for instance, if they run a Visa Rewards card, that card might have two different parts of interchange fee to it. It might have 1.7% plus a 10-cent per item fee. So every transaction is going to be charged an interchange fee of 1.7% plus a 10-cent per item fee. You'll also see a transaction fee. Now, the transaction fee, or what's often called the authorization fee or the auth fee for short, authorization or auth, that's the fee that's actually charged from the credit card processing company to process the transaction. So every transaction that's run, it could have a per item fee. It could also have a transaction fee attached to it. So that's a few of the fees. Now, get ready to really think hard as we get into the next couple sections. We're really going to dive in and explain these fees in more detail as we actually look at the statements where these fees exist.